Welcome to the Playbook for Modern Learning, where we are here to help you navigate what success means for your children in today's world. This podcast is brought to you by VIP Kid and Fortis Education, leaders in innovative learning solutions designed to support today's students in a rapidly changing world.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephenie, and I'm the founder and a learning interventionist at an organization called Beacon Learning, which is based in Beijing, China, serving kids between the ages of 4 and 16 primarily, specifically those with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia. Prior to that, I actually worked with VIP Kid, so that's one of the connections I have with a lot of folks who have been on this podcast, and I developed curriculum products for them, so including STEM project-based learning, online courses, and also the digital library that they use. And so very fond of the way that technology can have a positive impact on accessibility for students everywhere. I'm really excited today to be talking about positive education. I think it's one of the pieces that can be integrated into every classroom, into every family, and has great dividends for the kids that are within those spaces.
Hi, Steph. Pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Katrina Mankani, and I'm from Dubai. I'm the Director of Positive Education for Fortis Education Schools and Preschools. And I'm doing this for the past 15 years, actually. We have opened the first positive education school in the Middle East from start, so Samark School in 2016. And I work with more than 500 teachers in our schools. Through this, we influence about 5,000 children within the Fortis system.
Amazing. I'd love to hear a little bit about what drew you guys to positive education and made you guys make it such a core piece of like your curriculum and your ethos and your philosophy.
Thank you for this question. Actually, this is the main question. Why? Why do we do this? So there are two actually reasons for that. So the first why, we want to give students a compass that will take them to their true north, and that will not change. Because the technology is changing so rapidly that by the time the year one student is out of school, we don't know how the world is going to look like. We don't know what professions are going to be there. We don't know what university it is going to go to. We don't know even whether universities will exist the way they exist now. But the core, their character, their skills of well-being, their skills of resilience, this compass will stay with them forever. And that is, for us, this is as important as academics. So it's our responsibility as a school to prepare our students for life, not just to help them to pass exams. So this is number one. It's their compass, right? And number two, for us as a company, as Fortis Education, for our founders and for our board of directors, this is our core belief that we must give students skills, knowledge to be good citizens of the world. So if we are investing so much time, effort, and love and passion into our schools, we want to ensure that the students that come out of our schools are contributing to the world in a good way. That's the main two whys.
Yeah, I think that's very much so how we think about positive education as well. We think that every time one kind of succeeds in a skill, so to speak, or even in an academic setting, there are more goals that you can set for them, right? And that's often the case with families. You're chasing after specific goals. And what we find that is one of the core pieces that we'd like to develop within our students and support them to develop is a growth mindset that allows them to be more resilient. Because to continuously be in pursuit of goals that are ever changing is exhausting, it's trying, and we want kids who think of that as challenges and opportunities for growth, rather than thinking of it in fear or fearing further success because you might be pushed to a new level with like stronger competitors, which is something we often see in very goal-directed or goal-oriented societies and communities.
Yeah, so if I don't challenge myself, I won't grow. It's not about failing. It's not about what people think about me. It's about my growth. So in every classroom in our school, you will see a learning pit visual. And the learning pit is where the student basically falls when they learn something new. And then they need to find their resources. So what their resources are, the internal resources, external resources, somebody tells them how to get out of this pit, or somebody gives them a hand, or they basically get stronger, or they build something, right? So they come out of the pit, and that's how they learn something new. But there's a lot of suffering in the middle, and leaning into that discomfort with learning, it is a very important skill to teach students. We have a St. Mark and Region International School Code of Character and Conduct, which our students had brainstormed and created, which basically takes PERMA, right? PERMH. So the basis of Martin Seligman's theory of well-being. And they have put how will each of these components look in the school. So for achievement, what do we need to experience to achieve? So for a positive relationship, how the positive relationship should look in the school, right? And so for achievement, our students put that fail is a first attempt in learning. And we even have something called fail days, where we sometimes challenge students beyond what they can achieve, so that they kind of understand that failure is normal as long as we keep trying, adjust the strategy, and challenge ourselves.
I love that. I mean, I love the way that you guys have these visuals for thinking about failure and growth, for experiencing challenges and seeing, literally seeing kind of concretely around them all these resources that are at their disposal. I definitely think for a lot of our students, another big piece to being able to see it and normalize it is modeling. So a lot of times our kids in their everyday settings, be it on a sports team or at school, or, I mean, not in your school, obviously, but maybe in other schools, what they're surrounded by are people who really think about failure as something to be swept under the rug, something to be ashamed of. And sometimes even when they come home, the way that they report or talk to their parents about the fact that they had a difficult day, socially, academically, or whatever else, is one where they try to skirt by it, rather than really be able to explore and reflect upon it. And a lot of times what we think about in our setting, because we get to work with kids in a slightly more intimate, like one-on-one setting, usually my team does, is we think about how do we normalize and model it, right? Like model that process of beginning to experience uncertainty, a sense of loss of control. Model the experience of how do I find resources, find new strategies? How do I reflect upon the way that strategy is actually affecting my outcome? And then how do I look at an outcome, good, bad, in the middle, and think about what could I have controlled or changed about my process that could have potentially yielded a slightly different outcome? And I think, especially for parents, it is an enormous gift to give to a child to model it, because parents begin all the way up here in a child's heart, right? Like you are such a hero in their eyes. And I think a lot of times we forget that one of the ways that we can continue to be a hero is by modeling that we struggle too. Things are hard. We have to get through the boring things, the challenging things. And for us, sometimes that doesn't guarantee success. Even when it doesn't, we learn and we grow from that. And I think that's a huge piece.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The research confirms that one of the ways to teach growth mindset is to first model the struggle and overcoming challenges with growth mindset. We see as a school in Dubai, where, in Dubai, we have 85% expatriate population. We have a large population of our school of bilingual learners. Bilingual children, right, who have at least one additional language to English that they speak. And some children come without English at all. And sometimes these are the young children who are 3 and 4-year-olds. And sometimes it's the older children, so 8-year-olds or 9-year-olds. And one way that some schools do is just to accept them straight into the classroom and see how they swim out of it, right? But in our school, we fully understand that it is not just about language. It's about social interactions. It's about this child's well-being and what's important to them. And it's our innate need as human being to be connected to others and to be understood. Even when children are small, like my son is 2 years old, and he will repeat to me the same word 5 times until I show that I've understood what he's saying, even though I don't sometimes know what alalalik mean. So the same thing with bilingual children. And for us, it has been a huge success when we have created lots of programs around English as additional language, where we could work on relationship first between students and ensure that they understand each other on, a game level, on things which they can do together before even they start speaking the same language.
I think that's so huge. I mean, when we think about education within Beacon Learning, we think about trust building first, right? You want to create a safe and secure environment within which kids are free to experiment, creating freedom within boundaries so that kids kind of know within this space, in these ways, I am free to explore and learn and experiment with the materials or the concepts that are available to us. And I think that's so important for growth. And specifically for language learners, in China, a big part of the population that I work with are expats within international schools. And a lot of times it's hard to disentangle the relationship between multilingual factors or learning differences and then also curricular and content differences, because kids may be coming from different backgrounds and schools and countries. And that process of doing so, I think when you have trust as a starting point, makes a huge difference. Because you're going to find a child with a very jagged profile, right? Like they're going to be exceptional in some things, a little weaker in other things. Sometimes it's because of the way their curriculum was structured before. Sometimes it's because of just the skills that they have and have developed in the past, or the emphasis on various skills that other teachers and environments have provided for them in the past. And that process of exploring and figuring out where is this child on all these different skills, such that I can begin to think about targeting interventions or targeting skills and strategy development so that they can integrate more quickly, is totally trust founded. I've seen many kids, where their anxiety levels are so high initially that it's very hard for them to fully express. And one of my favorite stories is about this girl who came from Egypt and was actually in a French immersion school initially, and then joined a completely English immersive learning environment when she moved to China. But they actually spoke Arabic at home. And so she's the product of so many different languages. She also had a learning disability, so she had dyslexia. And it was very difficult initially because within 6 months, she was speaking English and you couldn't really tell that she was a third language speaker. However, she couldn't crack the reading. The phonological awareness skills that she needed, she just couldn't crack that. And so until we started threading all of the pieces that, she had difficulty actually with decoding in Arabic and in French previous to English, but also no difficulty speaking, no difficulty empathing and understanding the dynamics in the social context around her, that we were able to finally actually match her to the support that she needed. And so that she could actually regain her growth mindset about academics, right? Because initially, people were starting to kind of put her in a box as a slow learner across the board. And that really wasn't a fair designation for her because she had so many skills to draw from. And stories like that, I think, are plentiful when we're working with these like highly diverse, super integrated, multicultural, multilingual environments.
And the research says that those mindset-focused activities, they actually improve the chance of continuing with a foreign language by 31%. So what we were doing with her through all these interventions was to give her confidence to continue and not to withdraw and not to say, I want to go home, Mom. I don't want to go to this school anymore.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think being able to be persistent and resilient is hugely dependent on kind of the self-talk that you develop when you are faced with challenges. And a lot of times kids have a self-talk that is pieced together by what they hear adults saying around them, or even their peers saying around them, and being able to really listen to a child and a student so that you can notice the trends and how they're coaching themselves, right? And in order to kind of notice, oh, there's a pattern that's existing. This might be something that we need to kind of coach a different perspective on, allows a student to be able to take that self-talk into different languages, into different countries and different classrooms, for sure.
It is so important for us as adults, whether parents or teachers, to remember that, that goal, that learning goal, and the achievement of that learning goal lays with what we tell to the student today. So, when I train teachers, I show them this whole path. The student's self-regard is formed from the regard of the students around them. So what do we as teachers say? What do parents say? What peers say, right? So we want students to care not about what others say, but it's not real, right? They care and they listen to all feedback about them. So that's where their self-regard is formed with. And then when they feel that somebody believes in them and they're capable, then they have courage to continue. And through courage, then they have the resilience to overcome challenges, and then they reach the goal. So it all starts with what the teachers say. And I'm sure you know this most powerful research on praise, right? Like literally the praise can either break the student's achievement or make. And sometimes people misunderstand positive education as just all about positivity and praising kids. It's not. It's the science of praise. Because if we praise a student for their ability, we say you're smart or you're fast or whatever, like their ability or intellect, we're actually curbing their achievement. Because next time they will not challenge themselves, because they may think, Miss Mankani will change her opinion about me if I do not produce the same result. And instead, my job as a teacher, or my job as a mother, is to praise my child for his effort, his strategy, and the process he's doing. So, like saying, well done, not at the end, but during, in the process. You're trying so hard. You're so determined. You're putting so much effort. This is great, right? And this is what actually positive education about.
Yeah, totally. I have a lot of parents who, when we're having this discussion, will say to me, well, I don't know what to say to my kid. Like, I just want to say, that's amazing. That's great. And you're telling me that's not enough. And so, yeah, I think it's so key what you were saying. Just being able to descriptively say, like, we're going to praise effort. We're going to praise the process, right? And the strategies, and allow our parents to have some guidelines for doing that. And so a lot of times, like, I will talk about how when we are able to descriptively praise, that might be a starting point. Like, if you as a parent feel like you can't cut out the that's great, then after that, you say that that's great, follow it up with your description. So it could be, that's great. I saw you putting in your best effort, right? So sometimes that's all we've got in us is the descriptive praise. Another one that I think is really great is virtuous praise. So one that I really love is this idea that you have some virtues that you might like your child to develop. And what you're actually doing is you're linking it to a very clear action they can continue to take. So what you're actually doing is you're strengthening their sense of connection between actions that they can control and take and a virtue like honesty or persistence or focus, right? And then a third type of strategy that I think is always really helpful, and actually research says is the most helpful, is spotlighting. So in this mechanism, what you're actually doing is you're just noticing something that your child does. So you don't praise it at all. You don't put judgment upon it. You just notice. And what that does is it gets you closest to the child's self-talk. So rather than saying, that's beautiful, you use so many colors, one of the strategies is just to say, there's so many colors in your picture, right? And you have the positive tone, you're clearly noticing it. But what it does is it gets your child very close to the self-talk and coaching language you hope they use themselves the next time they're approaching thinking about how to put together a painting or a picture that they're doing as well. And what these strategies does is it helps us all have a couple of tools in our pocket that we can just grab out and apply at any time. And it happens all the time. So there's no stress if you're feeling like I missed an opportunity. You have so much time with kids as teachers or parents. There are ample opportunities to be putting these into place that allow your child to be noticed for things and allows them to learn to direct their attention to these pieces that you think are valuable and what they're.
Yeah, I love this idea of virtuous praise. I saw a study from 1995, I think, in Stanford, where they found out that children actually love to have this virtuous label. So if, with the ability, praise, and intellect, we go against it and we say no praise of ability, no praise of intellect. With character and virtues, we actually reverse it. And we say, give them this label. Say, you have taken Annie to the nurse. That's a kind act. And you are a kind person. So you're giving them your kind person, your honest person. So next time when they are faced with challenge, they ask themselves a question in their self-talk. What would a kind person do? What would an honest person do? Right? Because I'm an honest person. So I make the choice as an honest person to say the truth. Right? So as you said, it's a wonderful tool, and not, we're not taught this in school. There's no university for parenting, right? But these are the things that we as parents and as teachers have to then go and find. And teachers are more fortunate because there's a lot of literature and training that they can access. Parents don't know about these things. So this podcast, like the one we are recording right now, is so valuable.
Yeah, totally. I think there's just a lot of fear that a lot of parents have that they're going to spoil their kids with positivity. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, kids notice when they're making quote unquote mistakes, right? Now, the question is just, what do we do with that feeling, that sinking feeling in your stomach? Do we learn from it? Do we take that as an opportunity to process and reflect and think about what we could have done differently? Or do we try to say, like, I never want to experience that again? And what if that's making friends? What if that's going to school? What if that's talking to your teacher, right? These are actions we really hope our kids actually want. And so we want to give them ways to reframe, to be able to develop a perspective when they have a sinking feeling, which inevitably we all have, to persevere or to try again or to think about from another person's perspective about why they had the outcome that they
had. You mentioned a spot on point about parents being afraid that they spoil their children. They spoil their children with positivity, but they can't spoil them with negativity. They can spoil their children anyway. However, it's just, if I were to ask parents one thing, and myself as a parent, is to find a way to be honest with your children with love, right? Do you remember in Carol Dweck's book, she is giving 4 options on what should a mother tell her 9-year-old daughter who went for her first gymnastic competition and did not take any prize, right? And there were 4 options. You will win next time. You were the best for me. The competition was rigged and you didn't deserve to win. And so what is the correct answer out of these 4, right? Let's look at it. So you're going to win next time. That's an empty promise. That nobody guarantees this. And what do you mean? Like, how? What needs to be done for this? You were the best for me. Hopefully the child knows that you love her, but she wasn't there for you. She was there for coaches and for judges. And the judges didn't give her the prize. The competition is rigged, teaches a child that the world is unfair and that you can cheat. And sometimes, it's basically blaming others. So the only correct answer here is you didn't deserve to win. Obviously, you will say it with a different way. So it will be like, darling, you didn't deserve to win today because the other girls were actually training much more. So look, you just started. You just spent 3 months on gymnastics. They were training for 2 years. But if it's very important for you to win, let's look at the strategy here. What are you ready to sacrifice to win your next competition? We will have to stop swimming. We will have to stop football. And we will have to go for this gymnastic, not twice a week, but 4 times a week. Are you ready for this? Because if it's really important for you to win, we'll have to make it happen this way, right? That's honesty. That's honesty with love.
Totally. And a lot of what we're talking about is actually the development of executive functioning skills, right? And executive functioning skills continue to develop until you're 25, and so a lot of times what we're talking about is like, how as parents are you able to help your child assemble the information that they need to assemble in order for them to make sense of the world in a similar way that we as adults might when we're looking at a competition scenario like the one that you just illustrated, so that they have their own analysis or analyzation skills. And they're able to take a situation and digest it and process and understand it in a way such that they continue to want to put in effort and they feel like they have a direction for the effort. I think a lot of times we're in our environment quick to tell a child what to do rather than working with a child to model the critical thinking skills to adapt and adjust how they think about planning for the next time. Or even for this time, right? And in today's world, we're so busy. Like we plan our kids' schedules up to the minute. We figure out all the logistics and the coordination. We hope that they focus on what we have decided they should focus on. And a lot of times what we're doing is we're robbing the opportunities for them to develop their own observation skills that allows them to integrate their past experiences with the present circumstances to plan for their future. And if they're not doing that, their own reflections might feel a little shallow. As parents, you might hear them saying and making jumps to conclusions that feel kind of crazy, like the competition is rigged, right? We've heard kids say that before, like she always wins, the competition is rigged. And actually, part of it is that they don't see the work that student may have put in. Maybe they don't see the way the coaches are giving very explicit feedback for more deliberate practice. And all of that is analysis that we actually ought to model for our children such that they can learn that and develop it into a skill for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we apply this to language learning, then the perfect analogy here is, how we as adults also learn language together with the students, right? Like I'm learning right now Portuguese. I did my A2 exam and I was ready to give up because, okay, whatever, I know the basics. But it was then telling myself that, hold on, I really want to have a full conversation. And I want my son also to see that I have learned the language because he's learning Mandarin right now, right? And it's, I'm learning with him. Don't understand anything. Well, he talks to me now. He tells me words which I have to call his teacher to understand. But yeah, so it's about, again, doing things so that the children can see it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think language learning is one of the best examples. Many people have a much stronger growth mindset within language learning because we have, as a society, I think, a proliferation of these nuggets of wisdom about when language learning happens the fastest. We also have a lot of people learning language through various strategies, immersion, or through grammar textbooks and vocabulary lists, et cetera, et cetera. And so there are a lot of points of reference for us to understand language learning. And I think people feel a lot more comfortable saying, I haven't had the environment, or I haven't had this type of practice, or I could practice more to get better at languages. So I think it's a really healthy point to start. And I love seeing parents and teachers learn alongside kids, because I think, once again, like you're saying, it's just this wonderful opportunity to be like, I'm doing it too. Like, for some reason, I can't figure out how to conjugate this correctly. Like, if I want to, I know I'm going to have to look for more resources than Duolingo. And like, what resources are available? How can I break through my own little constraints, right? And that's an important process for sure. It's so great that you and your kid are learning language side by side.
Yeah, and also choosing challenges to your abilities. Like I can't hear the tones in Mandarin, so I'm not learning Mandarin with him. I learn another language. While he, as a very musical child and a young child, he can hear things differently than me.
Yeah, totally. And I've known a lot of expats around me as well, and I'm most impressed with adult learners of languages with particular characteristics that don't exist in their mother tongue. So, like you're saying, tones with Mandarin are very difficult. And, I know people who learn it in a way of writing down all the characters that they encounter and don't know, and then at night reviewing them on a nightly basis. After that, practicing tonal combinations of characters, right? And all of this actually, I'm always very impressed by, because the ones with the fastest learning curves are people who understand the concept of deliberate practice. They know that they need to have consistent feedback. They need to be identifying the specific aspects of language learning that they're getting stuck on, and they need to continue to sharpen and hone in specific directions. A lot of times we fall, especially when we have teachers that we trust, into a passive learning state, right? We're just like, someone will tell me when I should start learning in a different way. And lifelong learners like you, I'm sure, are people who continue to refine, like, know for yourself, for example, that tones are difficult, or know for your own child, for example, that certain types of tenses are difficult. And that's so great. I mean, I'm learning Spanish right now, and verb conjugations are crushing me.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of deliberate practice that you just referred to ties closely with motivation and with intrinsic motivation, because this kind of deliberate practice level that we hope our students would achieve only is possible when they know why they need it, or when it is their strengths, right? Like in terms of strengths, Waters writes about three main kind of features of how to spot that strengths in my child that I can actually develop, help them to develop, and that will give them also that intrinsic motivation to continue challenging themselves. So she says you need to see three things together. One is high use, meaning that they choose to do it all the time, right? Another one is high energy, that when they do it, they charge up. They like doing it. And the third one is the performance is above average. So if you see the three things, it means that this is the strengths for your child. And that strengths may not be the one that you want them to have. So, you want them to play piano, but they're not experiencing high energy when they play piano. They're not as good as you would like them to be. And they're only doing it for strategic compliance because they want to keep you happy, right? And if we really want to our children or students to achieve, we need to look at their strengths and tailor what we give them based on that. So let's say my child is kicking the ball since he was 1 year old, and I can see that he constantly chooses doing that. And my job as a mother is to help him develop this skill and challenge him constantly, right? Because this is his strengths. And it doesn't mean that he'll be a footballer, but it is what he needs at this point in time. And that is why I guess one other hack for parents is to see their child for who their child is, and to take their projections out of equation and help them to develop what they're good at, while of course working on what they also need to develop. But everybody, for self-regard, needs to be good at something, so that when they overcome challenges at something they're not good at, they can take the skills and transfer them there.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think that's huge. I think a lot of parents see pieces of themselves in their kids, rightfully so. It is their child. But a lot of times what ends up happening is, like, we project a little bit of our fears of what difficulties they may face or what they're going to be good at, almost as if predetermined because of our own characteristics or our own experiences, while not fully understanding what they're going to have in terms of opportunities or challenges ahead of them, right? So I think, like, keeping our own ego and our own experiences at bay is definitely a difficult but important thing to do. And I think you're totally right. Like having a parent behind your back, or a teacher or a coach behind your back that recognizes your interests and your strengths and is willing to foster it for kids is a way to help them feel understood. Like, a lot of times when I'm working with teachers or even parents, they're like, chop, let's work on the deficit, Like, there's so many deficits already. How do we have time to spend dilly-dallying and talking about something that they're already willing to spend so much of their own energy and time, like researching or doing, like Legos or building models or Minecraft or whatever. But a lot of what we don't understand is kids need to be seen and heard, right? And sometimes you just invest that 5 minutes into being there with them and celebrating something that was difficult for them within their interests, and it makes a huge difference. And then, like, the last thing that I would say that what you just reminded me of is about working on the deficits. I think a lot of times when our kids kind of begrudgingly but finally sits next to us, we think they also understand now the value of math. That's why they're sitting next to us. And what sometimes we don't see is that they value you. Like, they care about you as their teacher or their mom or dad, and that's why they're there. And so when you're quick to say, like, can't you just sit still? Or this isn't so hard, you memorized this math fact 2 seconds ago. A lot of times, what I encourage parents to think about is that this took an enormous amount of courage for them to sit next to you and to work on something that they know, because they already had feedback from school. They already had feedback on homework. They already had feedback on the past couple of weeks. This is not something that's going to be enjoyable. And they're doing it kind of for you, right? And to really slow down and appreciate that they probably captured a piece of what the concept is or what was coming towards them, but obviously not the whole thing, right? They might have misapplied a technique or a strategy here and there. They might not fully understand the concept. And sometimes starting from what the kids already know, what we call meeting them where they are, is a huge piece to breaking through, just correcting for the pieces that they misunderstood, right? Maybe they missed 5 seconds of a lecture or missed 2 lines of something the teacher was writing on the board. And when they do that and nobody notices, they can continue to carry with themselves, and it can accumulate into a label that they're not good at blah, 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 blah. And it will continue to make it difficult for you to be that supportive role in that child's life to break through in math or in reading or in whatever else is going on.
Yeah, it's about keeping our mind on the prize. And the prize is actually, what are we trying to achieve? So if we want our student to write a good essay, right? And if we already taught them everything about structure of the essay and, blah, 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 all of these things. And if we have a student who is English language learner, for example, right? Why do we ask them to write it about volcanoes when we know that that student is crazy about football? So can we ask him to write an essay with the argument that their team is better than the other one, right? So it is language in the end. I mean, unless your goal is to teach them about volcanoes, right? But if it's an English class and the goal is, like, what's the goal? The goal is to learn to write an essay, and the other goal is to foster relationship, as you said, so that the student wants to learn from me, because we talk to teachers constantly about that, and thankfully all our teachers are on board. We say, you are not a math teacher, you're not an English teacher, you're not a history teacher. You teach students in St. Mark's School, and you teach them math, English, or history. You teach a student first, and then you teach them math.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I think a lot of what we're trying to do with our kids is prepare them to be flexible and adaptive in the future and not be scared of the uncontrollable or unpredictable, right? And a lot of helping teachers see our students as individuals is about helping them access what a child is already bringing in terms of strength and in terms of confidence, to the classroom already and allowing that to be the foundation for them to continue to tackle things that might be a little bit trickier at the moment or might not be of interest quite as much at the moment. So it's really exciting to hear that you guys are doing that, like kind of at a school level. I want to come see your school at some point. That sounds like amazing.
Please, you're most welcome. And, as we are wrapping up, Steph, I'd like to invite you to kind of summarize some points that we have gained from each other, because I have gained a lot from you today. And if I walk out with a lot of takeaways, just for our listeners, I will name one, which is actually made out of 3 points. You mentioned that of course, praise is the most important tool, one of the most important tools in building self-confidence and also confidence to achieve, and the courage and the resilience, right? And you mentioned 3 things. You said, we praise the process and strategy and effort, right? We also give them virtuous praise and, the label of kind person, loving person, honest. And then you mentioned the spotlight, which is absolutely great, which has no judgment and is just noticing and putting a spotlight on something that the student or the child had done, and make them think, oh, somebody noticed.
Yeah, I really enjoyed our discussion as well. I feel like I've learned so much about how you think about implementing across schools, which I think oftentimes for teachers and leadership is one of the most difficult things to do. And I can really tell the way that in your methodology and philosophy, being student-centered is the key here, and honoring the fact that students come in with strengths, and that if we start from fostering those strengths, we're able to not only develop a better relationship with that student, but we're actually able to ensure that they show us the best version of themselves. Like you said, in your example of a student writing on a topic of interest rather than a topic that's been imposed upon them, and then asking them to showcase whether or not they are able to use the appropriate essay structure, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's an incredible thing to be able to have a whole school culture built around. So this has been an amazing conversation. I really learned a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit www.vipkid.com and www.fortiseducation.com.